Good morning and welcome once again to everyone to the AISCA Game Changer series. Thank you. Your host is myself, Ayanda Ndeta, and I am the VP for AISCA Southern Region. I'm very excited about our topic today, because I think we're going to be taking a little bit out of definitely my comfort zone, where we will be talking about the future and moving procurement beyond mediocre technologies. Before I introduce our speaker, I'd just like to share some house rules before I introduce our speaker, Mr. Gregory Otieno. House rules is that we're going to ask if you can please keep yourselves on mute while the presenter is talking, as it distracts them if you're off mute and there's some background noise. You may be placed on mute if you by mistake come off mute, but it doesn't mean that you should be silenced throughout our series, because we will allow for questions and a discussion at the end of the session. Furthermore, I'd just like to let you know that we are recording these sessions. They are currently live on Facebook, and you're also welcome to ask the AISCA office if you would like a recording of the sessions. But just so that you are aware, the sessions are being recorded. And then finally, you're welcome also to place your comments in the chat box, where at the end of the session, I will be going through the chat box and I'll ask any questions or comments that may be placed there to our speaker. But you are also welcome at the end of the session to take yourself off mute and ask questions there or contribute to the discussion. I say contribute to the discussion because there are a lot of procurement experts, subject matter experts. So we're really hoping for a lively discussion once we've heard the presentation. As I said, we're really privileged to have our game changer for the day, which is Mr. Greg. And he will be sharing with us the future of procurement beyond mediocre technology. If I could just give a little bio on Mr. Otieno so that you know why we selected him and why I'm calling him an expert. Mr. Otieno is really an accomplished and multifaceted procurement and supply chain expert with over 18 years experience in looking and delivering optimal results and business value in various environments, and really involved in cross-functional leadership, influencing a diverse number of people from different disciplines and obviously different nationalities across not just Africa, but the globe. He really provides hands-on experience in procurement and supply chain activities, but not limited to strategic sourcing, quality control, administration, logistics, supplier development, sustainability, Black economic empowerment within diverse industrial sectors, and is also involved in research services, being involved in the construction and engineering, the FMCG, motor vehicle, manufacturing, and banking. He also has specialities in supply chain, including logistics, planning, warehousing, procurement, supply chain, vendor sourcing, supply development, policies, and also strategy planning and analysis. Finally, as you will see when he delivers his presentation, he also has some expertise in terms of technology and really how to deliver value utilizing going beyond mediocre technologies. With that, I would really like to welcome Mr. Otieno to our session and really looking forward to him sharing with us his presentation and really providing some great insights and nuggets in the area of procurement, and also looking at how we can utilize technology to add value to the business. Gregory, really welcome, and I'm going to hand over to you. I did see that his presentation was up before.
Good afternoon, Dr. Ayanda. I think we have lost him due to network issues. Let me just try to get hold of him.
Okay, thank you very much. That's not a problem. I did see that his presentation was up before, so he was with us earlier. I'll also take this opportunity whilst we're getting Mr. Otieno back, just to welcome the people that I see that have logged in from across the continent. I see that Kenya is represented here. And I can also see that South Africa is also represented here. And we've got people from the West Africa. So welcome really for joining us. And I see a lot of people who have come through who keep coming through every month, as I'm gonna call us the stalwart game changers. So also just to share my appreciation that you do join us each time. I've got a question already in the chat from Jackson Karanja, who is asking if we'll be issuing certificates of attendance for these sessions. Unfortunately, that we do not provide certificates of attendance for the sessions, but I hope that doesn't discourage you, Mr. Jackson Karanja, from joining the sessions in the future. We do, as I said earlier, indicate that you can get the recordings of the sessions if you'd like to do so. But like I indicated, that we don't provide certificates of attendance for the session. Also welcome from Uganda. I see you, Amos Aluma. Welcome to you as well. Mr. Otieno, have you managed to join us? If I was an expert in his area, I would then try and do the presentation, but I would not want to rain on his parade. And I'm also not an expert in the area. Also looking forward to hearing from Mr. Otieno. We will give him just 2 minutes to be able to log on. I must say that's the challenge of doing business in, I'm going to say, in Africa. Technology does not always work with us, but we will give him 2 minutes.
Dr. Ayanda, I'm having some difficulties with reaching Mr. Otieno. So I don't know if we can just hold on for a few minutes as I am trying my all just to get reach of him. So yeah, I'm struggling.
Okay, we'll give him a few minutes. I'm also just booting up his presentation in the meantime. So thank you.
Yes.
If I can
Thank you
just
so much.
request the indulgence of the room whilst we try and get hold of Mr. Otieno again.
Okay, let me try.
For those who have just joined us, we had our speaker, Mr. Gregory Otieno, who was online a few minutes ago. He has dropped offline, so we are just waiting to get him back online. We do believe there was a network issue for those who have joined us. Wycliffe, I'm also looking at the chats already, and I see that Wycliffe has indicated that they are discouraged about the certificate of attendance, that we don't issue the certificates of attendance, and can't we see if we can maybe send them via email? We have noted that contribution and that suggestion, and we will look into it as AISCA, but as it stands now, we just encourage people to join so that we can share and debate issues on procurement and supply chain. So, which is really the purpose of the Game Changer series, and not necessarily the certificate of attendance. But I do want to encourage you, if you are looking for certificates or to be for certificates for different aspects of procurement and supply chain, AISCA does offer some training in different areas of supply chain, and I encourage you to contact the office so that we can get an indication of what training is offered. And also because they have various memorandum of understandings with different universities across the continent, then they can also indicate to you different universities depending on where you are located, where you could perhaps attend some sessions where you would then most probably get beyond the certificate of attendance. So really encouraging you to contact the office so that you can be led in the right area in terms of your country for elements of procurement and supply chain. I'm also continuing to look at the chats, and I do note the comment that also came through. Excuse me for my pronunciation of the name. I think it is Fidelis. He says, please making arrangements with the presenters to be where internet connectivity is good to avoid this kind of holdup. We note that. I do think it's something that happened beyond his control because Mr. Otieno was available. Mr. Otieno was available for at least 15 minutes before the session. So apologies for that. And we do think that it's something that is really out of his control because he also even sent us his presentation beforehand. So noted that. I'm also seeing Reverend Charles's comment saying that this is not a workshop or a seminar, so game changers should not, we're not providing certificates of participation. And I'd like to echo that as well, that yes, it is just, we're sharing in terms of knowledge and sharing information, making the procurement and supply chain fraternity aware of different things that are happening within the space across the continent. Having said that, hello?
Oh, sorry to interrupt you. I was just notifying you that Mr. Gregory is joining in now, just now.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Yes, boss.
I'll take this also. Okay, I wasn't sure if there was someone else making a comment. Bosco, we also note your comment as well. I do not think it's something that he had any control of. Your comment is, please advise the presenter to ensure that they're in areas where the connectivity is superb to avoid this disruption. I must say that we always try and do that. I do really believe it's something really beyond his control because he was available earlier on. So as I said, living and operating in different parts of Africa, it sometimes does become a little bit challenging, but I do think that he has overcome those challenges because I'm really happy to welcome Mr. Otieno to the Game Changer series. I have introduced you already, Mr. Otieno, so I'm going to actually ask if you can just take a big breath and join us, and you can take over the session. We are looking forward to it. As you can see, everyone did wait for you to reconnect. Welcome, Mr. Otieno.
Thanks, Ayanda. Thank you very much. And apologies to you guys. Where we are, sometimes we especially in the afternoons, we have challenges with the network, but that's what it is, as Ayanda was explaining, that sometimes we get a lot of challenges out here in Africa. Unfortunately, and ironically, we are going to talk about technology, and we are facing challenges with technology at the same time. I'm just trying to upload the presentation once again, so that we can be able to all be able to see it.
Would you like me to do that for you?
Yeah, Ayanda, you can do it from your side. It will be quick and better on your end if you can.
Okay, I will do so for you.
Great, thanks, Ayanda.
I'm also going to just warn everyone. I normally ask the presenter to show their camera, but today I'm too scared to do so, Mr. Otieno. Not because I don't trust what you look like, I just don't trust your network. So we shall trust that behind that voice, there is a person and not a robot. So welcome.
Thanks, Ayanda, again. Yeah, I had asked earlier on that I switch off my camera because of the network connectivity issues. So, okay, thanks very much, and welcome everybody to our second series of procurement technology beyond mediocre technology. Last time, the people who were in the meeting, when we had our first session, we looked at the different technological platforms that are available for procurement in terms of what we can deploy or what can be deployed within the procurement function to be able to then make us be able to work faster, efficiently, and effectively. In that particular meeting, there was a question that was raised that then informed the subsequent looking at how we can go around that particular question that was raised. And the main question somebody raised that what is going to happen to procurement if we automate everything? If everything is automated, what then happens to those people who are currently working in procurement? And normally that's a general kind of feel. We feel sometimes we are insecure. We feel like maybe where we are deployed, our organizations will then automate and we will be rendered redundant and walk away. But lo and behold, today we're going to see that that notion, that's not the case. There's a place and a position for us in this technological transformation within the procurement and the broader supply chain function. So without further ado, we're going to be looking on how to ensure your digital procurement transformation program delivers on promise. So we saw the different solutions that are out there. Today, let's see how we can be able to transform and be able to deliver on the promise that is there to be promised to our end users. Three things that we're going to focus on are paying inadequate attention to the benefits. Why is this important? If we're not paying enough attention to the benefit that technology brings, and we're not going to be answering this question just directly the way it is, I'm going to flip it on the other side and basically present you with the available benefits that we stand to gain by implementing the technology that is there, or transforming our function to a technologically viable unit or function. And then, of course, we're going to be looking at paying inadequate attention to structure. Again, I'm going to flip this question the other way around. If you may ask me, you can say, we need to pay more attention to structure. So I've just played the devil advocate here, and we're going to see how we can be able to see how structure enables us be able to transform our procurement function from analog to an automated system. And then finally, we're going to look at what happens if we fail to put the right stuff in place. And I think that part will answer the question around what will become of the current procurement teams that are working within the procurement function. So let's look at benefits versus value that we stand to realize. Most often, new digital features that are inspired by us as our procurement leaders, we tend to develop these business cases with the aim of challenging or approval of procedures, and in that instance, we then generate a lot of enthusiasm from the different stakeholders within our organization. So whenever we are setting up a procurement project, a procurement transformation project, there's always eagerness, or there's always a high expectation that probably we create within our organizations that we're going to be able to reach that panacea of functioning effectively. And unfortunately, if we are not careful, digitization normally, it's not the panacea in most instances, and we will see why this is so. If we over promise, we may end up under delivering in terms of the realization or the transforming of a procurement function from a more manual process to a digitized one, or an automated one. There has been situations whereby through a research that was done, that this particular kind of scenario exists, where you find that things like reduced operational costs, expected or promised value you find were 35%, and the actual realized was only 24%. When you come to high productivity, the promise was given as 65%, and the only realization was 38%. Cognitive sourcing, the promise was 69%, and the realization was 28%. And so goes on. the different facets or activities within procurement functions that has been looked at in areas that digitization has been realized or digitization has been promised. So as I said earlier on, it's not that by just putting in new technology and putting in new structures that we're gonna end up realizing what we have promised. If we are not careful, we end up falling short, as this particular research that was done by GEP shows. And why do we need to focus on the benefits? What is the main reason why we need to focus on the benefits rather than the tool itself? Because most of the time we tend to really focus our attention more on the tool that we're going to deploy. We saw in the first presentation that we had sometimes last year, there was so many tools that were out there, and everybody's running to be able to offer a tool or to bring in-house a tool that is being sold out there. So why is it not so much important to focus on the tool rather than we focus on the benefit? It's because of simple reasons. One, many platforms are capable of producing results. However, we need to be able to focus on the tool, on the benefits that we want to realize rather than the tool that is out there in the market. We also need to understand that as advocates of transformation, we may be overly focused on technical solutions, and we give buzzwords in terms of the projects that we are trying to implement, and then we end up with what we call a kind of a fuss, or what the British call hulopa, around the instrument that we wanna deploy, rather than the benefits that are available. So going back to the first presentation that we looked at the tool, there were many beautiful or many enticing solutions that were being offered. If we get stuck in that particular mode, if we get stuck on what is the new tool that is coming into play rather than focusing on what we really want to achieve, we may not be able to attain the objectives that we want to attain. And then it's important that we pay particular attention on the transformation process. We need to be able to pay a particular attention on the transformation process. If we are not careful, we end up doing what we call taking the current manual processes that we are having, and then just automating them without getting any benefit out of them. So we end up focusing on things like, for example, what are what we call the approval levels, and what are the rights that are given to different people who should be able to approve different stages of the procurement process, rather than really focusing on what do we really want to gain at the end of the chain. And when we do that, the reason why we are trying to deploy the tools is because we are trying to deploy an efficient tool that will enable us to be able to be more efficient. Then we may end up reaching a point whereby the end users that are using the tool that we have deployed then become kind of disoriented with what we have already implemented. So it's more important when we are trying to do the transformation, first of all, to pay attention to the benefits that we want to attain. Once we have paid attention to the benefits we want to attain, then we align those benefits with the tool, the right tool that we can then be able to use for our automation purposes. The success factors that we need to look at to be able to see or gauge the necessary benefits that then we can link into the tool that we want to use include things like, who are the suppliers that we want to enroll? And through an exercise that was done by PwC, they found that the focus, like for example, attention to suppliers that are needed to be enrolled was factored in as 21% to be important. That's what I mean. Things like considering of our corporate culture. What culture are we operating under? What is the corporate culture that we are currently under? Because remember, when we deploy a tool, there are certain things that certain activities, certain tasks that we're going to leave to the end user to be doing them by themselves rather than bringing it to procurement. So the culture we should be able to be careful around to see whether the culture is right, whether the people are going to be willing to take up the task that we're going to be able to delegate to them through the using of the tool. For example, I'll give you a typical example. We know that we automate to release transactional activities within the procurement and remain with the strategic elements of the procurement activity. So is the culture right? Is the culture allowing us? 26% was found to be the position that culture within an organization plays when you're considering to do a digital transformation. Choice of integrator or project manager who is going to support that particular transformation is very important in terms of it was found to be sitting at 29% in terms of its importance. And then the choice of vendor was at 30%. Involvement of stakeholders, business players, and sponsors was 44%. Investment in change management is very, very high at 54%. So we're starting to see those elements that either will enable us to be able to transform effectively or never to transform. So change management, when we come to changing from our manual process into our automated process, we need to be able to make sure that we understand the change management process that will enable us to implement the transformation that we are trying to do. And then, of course, adaptation to existing processes. So how we adapt the current tasks that are either manual or semi-automated to the current process that we are trying to bring is of utmost importance. So those are some of the factors and how they scored in their importance and what we need to focus on in terms of our digital transformation journey. Then some of the ways that we can utilize to avoid technological pitfalls include we need to have a logical plan in place that enable us to start our transformation journey. So we need to look at how we're going to be able to implement this particular transformation, and normally a top-down technique in assessing and prioritizing the current processes. It's very critical in what we are trying to do. We'll also need to be able to not so much be kind of focused on being too aware or on things that are overcomplicating the structure before we even start the process. So basically what we're trying to say there is that let's not be so much focused on the mundane. Let's look at the aspects or the elements that can be able to enable us move quickly and transform effectively. And then effective control of non-digital vendor relationship. So those vendors that are not digitized, let's say, for example, in a place where I am at the moment, you'll find that, and in many other places in Africa, for example, you'll find that there are some of our suppliers, or there are some suppliers within the supply chain that do not have automation. They cannot be able to automate. I'll give you a typical example. I worked on one project in my previous role where we automated everything, and we were trying to load all the suppliers into the system so that they could be able to submit their tenders through the automated tendering process. And we came to realize that, you know what, we're in a very remote part of Africa. Internet is a problem, electricity is a problem. So how do we expect that if we send a tender out technologically, first, will it reach the people that we're trying to get to tender? Second, if they submit it, will they even have the tools and the equipment that will enable them then to be able to upload their tenders on time? So we then decided that instead of just automating internally and trying to make sure that vendors automate internally, because our policies say that we need to automate to reduce chances of fraud within the tendering process. We then decided and talked to our head office and said, okay, fine, we're going to do the automation. There's no problem. And we're going to encourage our suppliers to also automate the system. But we're going to need to help them and come up with a system whereby they can be able to load their tenders on time at the right time that is needed. And we decided that, you know what, the best way to do this is to be able to build a data point or a data place or a data center where they can be able to go in there when tenders are being put out. They can check which tenders are out from us, and then they can be able to fill whatever they need to fill, and then come and upload. That meant that we needed to simply build a place that is used by suppliers to be able to fit into our automation process. So that's just a typical example of what that particular element is trying to say there. So we need to look at those kind of elements. It's useless for us to say we're going to automate, but then we cannot receive tenders through the automation process. So the element of the policy that we are trying to streamline won't be met because we have looked internally rather than look at the bigger picture and externally. So that talks to the next element of holistic view of procurement outside the organization. So we need not only to be fixated, and that's why I said, let's not get fixated with the element of which tool is there in the market. Let's fixate on what are the benefits that we are trying to achieve. So in this instance, we found out that we needed to be able to attain that element of fair competition, because for you to attain a policy requirement that you need to allow the suppliers to compete for a bid fairly and ethically and transparently, then you need to be able to avail to them the space and the means and the way to be able to attain that objective. So that's a typical example of what we need to look at in terms of what can make our technology fail. We can go to the market, buy a robust technology, buy the best, come and implement it, but then it fails to be utilized, and every end user go back to the old ways of doing things around procurement. The next important thing that we need to look at is once we have gone into the process of going through the journey of transformation, is the question of what kind of data do we have? What data are we sitting with currently in-house? We need to look at issues of legacy data that is too old that we don't need to hold again. And we need to make sure that that data is cleaned, the data that is relevant is maintained, the data that is not relevant is thrown out. The simple adage here is, we know that rubbish in, rubbish out, or garbage in, garbage out. So if we put data into the system, into the new system that is not relevant or that is not useful, then the whole technological transformation will not be able to be realized. We're going to be having issues and we're going to be having problems. Again, the element of we promised a robust system. In the first presentation, we looked at some of the best or some of the most optimal solutions that are out there. They're costly. We have gone to our stakeholders internally. We have prepared a strong business case. We have presented to the board have approved. We've gotten the money. It's expensive technology. We've been given the money. We've come, we've started the implementation, and then the data is data that is not useful to us, or the data that is not really going to help us. So we need to focus on cleaning up the data and making sure that we have the relevant data that is going to help us. So how do we avoid that? We do by investing in data cleaning. We need to really focus on cleaning the data. So look at where we are at. We are not looking at the system yet, or we are not focusing on which tool is that we want to use, but do we have the right data? Is that data harmonized across the different feeds that align to our sourcing processes? So we need to look at things like that. The new technology, what kind of data will it be able to take? How the quality of data that we need to put into the system that we are focusing in bringing into place. So all those elements needs to be factored in. So, and again, we also need to look at things like what are we going to use the data for after we have implemented the system? How are we going to be able to take out the data, analyze it, and be able to utilize it in our day-to-day usage in terms of what we want to attain? And then we look at other elements, things like what kind of budgets do we have? What level of budget is available for us to be able then to be able to clean the data that we do have and be able to provide the relevant information to the new system that we are going to use. So In a nutshell, we have looked at what we call the technology up to so far. So we have really looked at how do we infuse the technology that we want to put in place, and what do we need to do to be able to then transform from where we are at this particular moment in time to the new space that we want to be, or the as-is space where we want to be. Now, all this is well and good. If we have each and everything that we want to do, we have looked at the benefits that we want to attain. We have been able to really pin down the elements of data that needs to go in and data that needs to be left out. But at the end of the day, there is a much more important element, is that we need to find out the right structure to be able to implement the transformation that we are having. And this is now the nitty-gritty or the meat of the thing. In our first presentation, or in our last year's presentation, there was a lot of concern around, what is going to happen to our procurement teams? What's going to go ahead in terms of, if we automate, how are we going to be able to utilize the guys that we have, or the teams that we have? In a research again done by PwC, they found out that, one, new model skills accounted for 19% of the success in implementing a new or a transformative digital implementation project. It was being followed very, very closely by what we call change management. So change management was following closely, and then we had internal sponsorship. Normally, what we normally look at as procurement professionals, we normally say, we're not getting support from the top management. There's no internal support. Nobody's really helping us. There's nothing we can do much. But look at what is really important in terms of any transformative journey that we want to do. This is just for the transformation journey for digitization. But any other thing, skills is something that is very, very important. What kind of skills do we have in-house? It's not only about in digitization, but in the digitization space, skills seem to be very important, because it's going to be able to either help us manage the transformation journey or lose the fight that we are trying to attain. So we are trying to move from what we call a silo kind of environment. Let's try and move away from the silo space that we most of the time are accustomed to a space where we have what we call an internal data expert point, where you have people who are capable and able to be able to support the digitization that we are trying to be able to implement. This means that we need to move away from what we are normally used to doing, which we call, or the structure that we are normally used to, where we have what we call the functional structure. So we need to run away from our mentality needs to change completely from a functional element. We need to start thinking around what we call a network kind of structure, whereby we have different experts from different areas to be able to support the transformational journey to digitization that we are trying to attain. And that then means that we take away the notion that we are procurement, although we are, and start looking deeply into what are some of the other skills and skill sets that either we can bring in, or either we can upscale our teams to be able to attain. So whatever we cannot be able to attain with the current team in terms of trying to upskill the team, we need to be able to source it correctly and bring it and fuse it into the function. And then we run away from the mentality that, we are procurement, and that probably is legal, and that is probably marketing, or that is probably, we need to now start thinking around like project implementation teams and project network teams, so that we can be able to have different skill set and different functions coming, or different expertise coming into our space. So for example, how will we then need to formulate our front office So we can be able to have people like people with business partnering skills, people who bring the element of good business developers, people who understand the customer, because remember, we as procurement, we deal with customers both internally and externally. Earlier on, I gave an example of we were deploying technology in our procurement process, but if we only looked internally and never engaged the external stakeholders who are our suppliers, we couldn't have achieved the objective that we were trying to achieve. So we had to have people who are just understanding the business of external stakeholders or of external partners, the suppliers. Sometimes we as procurement, we think we understand, we sometimes don't, because we most of the time meet with suppliers when we are basically looking at our side of the game in terms of how much money do we want to save, what quality are we looking at, and that's why sometimes we find the negotiations become so much kind of antagonized. So we then need expertise, people with that business development expertise, and those people may be in our organization, but in a different department. We can utilize their skills by bringing them into the transformational journey in terms of how do we then engage with the suppliers, or what skills of business partnering can we be able to apply. If we have people who are internally within procurement with those kind of skills, we can ramp them up and use them. Strategy, insights, and analytics. We will need people with very good analytics skills. Luckily enough, within procurement, we do a lot of analysis most of the time in terms of understanding what we call our product flow and the different numbers that are prices that we pay. Category management, that's normally a skill that is internally within procurement. And internal and external data feeds, people with those kind of knowledge and skills will be needed. Stakeholder management, again, sits very closely with business partnering. And of course, pipeline management. When you come to the middle office, or what we can term as middle office colloquially, you will need people with we have a sourcing in terms of the sourcing aspect. Then you have strategy and auctions, then contracting, then drafting and approval and signing. Remember, we need contracts that needs to be drafted. So there already we need people with some legal understanding or legal acumen. And you can now see how the networking element or the networking structure element is starting to emerge. And then when we go to the back office, you need people like people with customer support. You need help desk skills. You need supplier support. You need RFX and invoice payments aspects, and so forth and so on. So what I'm trying to really paint here, or a picture that is trying to come up here, is that going back to the question of the scare or the fear that we had as procurement professionals, that what is going to happen to us, we need to start changing. We need to start upskilling ourselves, acquire different skills, acquire different knowledge, acquire different expertise where you can. Where we can't internally acquire them by either supporting members of our teams with those abilities and showing some level of understanding of those elements, then we need to start really reaching out closely to other units, other departments with those particular skills that can be able to then support us in the transformational journey and to be able to enable us to attain the objective of transforming to digitization. And then, of course, I've talked a lot about that particular section. So these are some of the pitfalls that we need to avoid. Let's make sure that we develop digital centers of excellence by providing capabilities. I've talked about the element of different skills. Let's have the right back office skills, and of course, as to sourcing to contract and procurement to pay in terms of teams that we have, and then upskill where we can be able to upskill. So there's a lot on the table, or there's a lot to be shared amongst ourselves and amongst the other units that can be able to support the transformation. So how do we then start the journey to the future? If you look at all the things that we are trying to do, there's only 3 components how bit more detailed, there's more meat that we need to look at. But on a top level, you're looking at only 3 aspects that you're dealing with. You're dealing with data. You need to have a clear and clean data infrastructure. Your data needs to be cleaned. Your data needs to be clear so that you can be able to transform to a robust and effective digitization processing within the procurement function. Then, of course, you need a well-trained team. We need to have a team that is well-trained, where we don't have skills. We look at how we can bring them in-house. Where we have capabilities, we need to look at talent that is sitting within our portfolio. How can we train them? How can we upskill them? And what can we add within the particular unit? And then, of course, we have the technology. So the technology comes up in terms of at the edge, in terms of what kind of technology now do we really wanna infuse into the system, or what technology do you wanna really use in terms of what we are trying to attain. So in a nutshell, in a bigger picture, this is what we are trying to really attain. And that answers those particular 3 questions that we started with. We looked at why do we need to focus our attention on the benefits? And we have seen that if we focus on the technology, we're going to lose the bigger picture. And then we looked at how do we structure our transformation journey. We've seen that let's move away from what we call the silo business kind of mentality, the functionality where we call ourselves procurement. We deploy a system, we say, from today, procurement has deployed whatever system XYZ, and everybody's going to have to come on board on that. We may end up losing the entire organization, and the benefits intended may not be realized. And then, of course, finally, we need to look at what skills or what data do we have, and how clean is that data? Because if we bring in legacy data into the new systems, again, we may end up not attaining our objective. And with that, colleagues, I think if we focus on that, we will be able to attain our transformative journey as pertaining to digitalization. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Otieno. I will at this time ask if there are any questions. I'm also going to just stop sharing, because then it enables me to see the chat and the hands that go up.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask if there's any questions. I see there's the Reverend Charles has his hand up. Reverend Charles, if you can take yourself off the mic to ask your question.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think I have woken up now, because sometimes it's challenging to discuss such points. But being in the industry for 38 years and also in academia now, I have 5 points that I want to raise. Not for 2 questions will come out of this 5. So the first one is the ERP has been very robust in the procurement, and even in Kenya we are stuck with that, because we have the IFMES, which is supposed to help, but otherwise it's just like used for payments. So we have that problem that we have to solve. But it's come out that everybody must learn what the benefits are, and also not just wasting money by that. But might be you have gone through this, you will might be have a review on that one. Number 2, when you talked about the data centers and iHubs, I realize now that we need procurement iHubs, where they can also help people who are stuck, like the SMEs, in Kenya you call them Juakalis and other East Africa. So where they can go and get assistance, just like we have Huduma centers, and it has come out clearly that we need that. It might not happen tomorrow, but it needs that one, because we need homegrown collaborative approach to this. Number 3 is the analytics. Right now, the universities, even where we are moderating today, we are changing from just traditional things, but incorporate analytics into supply chain programs. And you have mentioned very well, and we have to be also be ready for that, because most of the people, most of the professional bodies are the traditional ones. You know, we have seen where somebody is just saying, I want the CPD points. If I what for? He's not ready to discuss, because he's lost in either scaling the know-how, but just meaning that we have other hats we have put together. So that one is also very clear. Number 4 was now a question like standardization for data management in procurement. Maybe there will be a new approach to that, because everybody wants to throw in on that to make sure that, so if we have a way that we can have a framework for that, also we can help the people who are either with us or not. Then the final one is we talked about the competency framework. Obviously, professional bodies here, in fact, in Africa, I don't want to accuse anyone, but in Africa, we borrowed from CIPS and we are dying with the CIPS. And yet we have a chance to do our own. And our own means we have to have the input from them and also tie up with the academic programs, so that we come with a solid thing. But here we are dying with the old one. So when we are clearing the data, we must also clear our competency framework for Africa. So my questions, 2 of them now. How feasible is it that we can establish data centers, the IHub approach? Number 2, how can we go about standardization of this data management in procurement? And number 3, how can we also now lobby for competency framework? Because in Africa, we are seeing that everybody's run away with all these qualifications. And that's why ASCA has been very, helpful to put things just across the board, not procurement for public, but we are getting things worked out that way. So the competency framework, is it possible? So those are my comments and my questions also. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Reverend Charles. I'm going to give Mr. Otieno a chance to answer the questions. And just for Uluka, I do see you. Once we've got the response, we'll ask you to ask your questions. Gregory, over to you to respond.
The first one on terms of making sure that there's what we call, he call them IHubs. Again, we are Africans and we know the challenges that we do have. When we started this presentation, the first thing that happened is I was all of a sudden I was bombed out. So think about if it was a tender that was supposed to be submitted, for example, if I was submitting a tender, had given us 3 minutes extra to be able to submit the tenders, I would have been out of that bidding process. So in my previous role, what we did is we lobbied the organization and we say, as part of the cost of the transformation to digitization of the processes, we know that it's a policy requirement that we operate ethically, transparently, and competitively. So the digitization process is just bringing the element of aligning to the policy of what we call transparency, as well as open competition. So in order for us to be able to be seen to be fulfilling that, we know in the environment where we are operating, and we operate in very remote terrains, let's include in our budget the budget of putting up IHubs, where we will kit the IHubs with the necessary technology. So we made sure that we built we constructed the IHub, we kitted it with all the technological requirement that it needed, and we made sure that the internet or the network availability in that particular space was always available 24/7. So the kind of internet that we are using in our organization for our day-to-day activity, we availed it for the community of suppliers that we are operating with. In that way, no supplier could be able to say that, 1, I didn't see the tender notification, and 2, I couldn't upload the tender or my submission because I didn't have data. You see what I mean? So I was excluded in the process because I cannot compete, because they are bringing a system, or they're bringing a process in their procurement process that only favors people or organizations or suppliers that they know are well established. So that is how we tackled that. So to answer that question, organizations, whether they're universities, whether they are private entities, or whether they're public entities, we as procurement leaders who lead the moment we decide that we want to do a transformative journey, or we want to transform from a manual to an automated system, we have to consider the element of the outside procurement chain that we have, and what will we do to enable it to be able to fulfill the objective that we want to achieve. So let's not look internally, let's also look outside. And the simple answer to that, we will have to motivate for the budget of, most likely, and in all cases, building iHubs, and that's what it is. On the issue around how do we go about standardizing the data, again, we will have to engage what we call data experts. We may not be the experts in each and everything, but we can bring in resources with the relevant expertise in data cleaning and enabling us to really just have the data that is relevant to what we want to attain and what is going to be necessary going forward. So again, it brings that element of engagement with all the stakeholders that needs to be brought into this particular space. 3, the issue of how do we lobby? I guess here you're mainly talking about CIPS, which is the procurement kind of mother body for most African countries. We as leaders, we run procurement organizations in Africa. So a platform like this one is where we can be able then to engage CIPS as a body to find out how we can then either restructure the syllabus to include these new technological needs that are coming in. I'll give you a typical example. I want to use a very, very typical example. This year, there will be a World Cup in Qatar. Already FIFA has announced that the offside mechanism that is going to be used there is going to be technology. They've moved from what we call the third referee, which is the VAR, to the ball itself. So the ball itself is going to be talking to the VAR. So that is artificial intelligence at play. But they had to take time, study it, and make sure that when they implement it, it's workable. So we as procurement professionals, we're not going to run away from AI. We're not going to run away. It's here with us. It's here. So we need just to be able to then work together. The challenge that we have had as procurement professionals is that we have always worked in isolation, in silo. And all of us, or each one of us, want to prove to all of us how good we are. You see what I mean? As an individual. This race is not going to be won by one individual. Yes, as an individual, you can move very well. You can go up to the level of becoming the CPO of an organization and so forth and so on. But you're not going to win this race alone. You're not going to go further than the CPO level. You're not going to change the agenda if you're by yourself. So the teams that you have, bring them together, lift them together, and let's work together as in unison to be able to move where we want to move. Change is here. Artificial intelligence is here. If we are not careful, we're going to be left behind, and we're going to be left behind in a big time. I read a post in LinkedIn the other day where a lady posted, surprisingly, she posted to say that because of world challenges, supply chain is a problem. Why are CEO or executives, use the word executives, still focusing us on cutting costs, yet there's a high inflation and of course the supply chain is difficult. And I reposted that said, 20 years plus, 20 years going on, following the financial crisis, we are still focusing on the transactional cost saving aspect. As procurement professional, we are losing the plot. If we're stuck in the quagmire of cost saving, we are losing it. You're not going to talk to any supplier at this particular moment in time and tell them that cut cost for me. They're going to tell you, sorry, I'm not going to supply you. I'm going to supply the next person who is willing to pay this number, because supply chains are clogged up everywhere around the globe. I was dealing with another client who wants to buy coal. The deal couldn't move because the ports in Europe are clogged up. No ship is moving because things are just stuck. So when you're dealing with those kinds, you need to be quick, you need to understand, you need to bring a little bit of a higher level of what we call skill and cognition and so forth and so on. We cannot achieve this as Africans if we totally depend on our brothers and sisters in the developed world, because they're churning out technology day and night. They're pushing technology day and night. And it's for us to be able to see how best we're going to utilize that technology to benefit our environment and our situation. I hope I've answered those 3 questions.
Thank you very much, Gregory. I'm going to then ask Oluka to please place themselves off mute and ask their question.
Yes, thank you so much, Gregory. Thank you so much, Gregory, for the presentation. However, I have not a comment. You're talking about standardizing data, transformation, and all that. But I think it's high time as supply chain professionals to start thinking how to engage policy makers on how to think about how the human rights and fundamental freedoms can be protected as we use this data and as we engage also the so-called external persons to develop these technologies. It is now the in thing. We cannot run away, and I agree with you. But then we need to find a way of how do we protect the human rights ethically within the procurement function. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Oluka, for that comment. Gregory, I'm not sure if you want to say anything or if I can ask the other Gregory in the room to ask their question, and perhaps you can then comment on Oluka as well.
I had to go ahead and let the other person ask the question. It was a more comment.
Yes. Gregory Namusa, I think it is. Namusonge, excuse me.
Thank you.
Please take yourself off mute.
Thank you very much. I would like to appreciate Gregory for this good presentation and enlightening us about how we can change from manual systems to digital systems. Mine is just a comment that in order to set up effective digital centers, we need a lot of capacity building before we can do that, in which case we require to develop manuals to train so that we can transform the process. Any data which is not shared may not be very critical. So data is useless if it cannot be captured, shared, and accessed by all the beneficiaries at different levels of the digital divide. So in this respect, I would also then say that to make our supply chain more effective, we need to see how we can include knowledge management so that we manage data effectively and then transform it. If you look at a situation in Kenya, you will find that we are moving towards digital transformation, where a large number of the firms now require that the tenders are actually done online. And then they are done also in the Treasury, National Treasury portal. So you find that most of these people don't have that kind of knowledge to be able to deal with this scenario. So when it comes to moving forward and the future of the journey, I've seen that Gregory is talking about well-trained team. A well-trained team is good, but its quality becomes important. How credible are these people to be able to deal with this kind of scenarios? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gregory. I'm also going to request Ahmed Katu to make a comment or a question, and then Mr. Otieno will summarize the two that we've received, and as well as Ahmed. Ahmed, please place yourself off mute.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Gregory, for the nice presentation. Mine is about what you mentioned regarding the benefits versus the value attained. Because in the presentation, you illustrated in terms of like increased saving, that one went to 53%. But when you look at the target was 87%. And then you looked at cognitive sourcing, value achieved, that was 28%, and then the target was 69%. So just a simple analysis of these two figures that are given, you find that the value versus the benefits, it is still low. So that one, my question comes, are we not doing enough? Because in terms of convincing the stakeholders, because our role is to disseminate the knowledge to the stakeholders and then convince them to migrate from the traditional way of procurement, and then they adapt to the digital method. But these are some of the things that we need to present to them. How are they saving, moving from the traditional method, and then they talk about the digital method. And then the other aspect is, you pointed out that there is an increasing demand to ensure that there is effective control of non-digital vendor relationship in the space of the digital relationship, where you alluded to segmenting the non-mature suppliers. If I got you right, it's like we need to maintain the two, which may have like the hybrid. You handle the traditional method, at the same time, we give chance for the suppliers who are unable to take up the E method. But for example, if say there is a call for tender bids, and the call probably specifies that send your documents using the e-system. And then when the bids come in, again, you are having the traditional method, which I look at that at the point of maybe screening the bids, it may require probably to set up a team that is going to witness opening the traditional, rather the bids that have been submitted traditionally, contrary to the one that have been submitted to the procurement method. So I look at it as if it kind of adds more work to the team that is going to work in procurement. Then secondly, in terms of maintaining integrity, probably avoiding people who can sneak in bids in the traditional way rather than sticking on the E method. So my question is, how do you practically handle that to make it effective? And then it abides probably with the prevailing rules and regulations of the stakeholders. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that. Mr. Otieno, can I ask you to respond to the comments that were made as well as Ahmed's question? Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Yeah. The comment that were made earlier on, when you come to the issue of what we call human rights and those aspects, I think one thing that we as procurement, we need to focus on always and and put it as our compass that guides whatever we do. If we are serious with whatever we are doing, we say that we are procurement professionals, and we are the ones who are what we call trusted with the most important commodity in our community, whether you work for a private organization or you work for a public organization. We are entrusted with a resource that basically makes the world go round, and that's money. When that's a trust that is given to us, and so to be able to carry out that trust in a manner that we will show our trust, we need to be able to understand the element, one simple aspect called sustainability. It's of no use to be sustainable economically by squeezing the suppliers to give you the lowest price possible, and yet tomorrow that supplier won't be in business. So you haven't helped anything. If there's anything at all, you have taken so many people out of their jobs, because that supply is going to close down, and look at the families that that organization would have employed. So you have impacted on human rights in one way or another, albeit negatively, because somebody now is going to go home without a resource to support their family. If we look at the issue of what we call climate aspects, we need to be champions of climate change. We need to deal with organizations and suppliers who are cognizant and conscious about climate. We know what is happening in our backyards. Example, in South Africa, we had Durban recently, where there was floods all over the place. People are still suffering. In Kenya, we have the northern part of Kenya. In Ethiopia, we have northern part of Ethiopia. In Sudan, in Somali, in you name it, everywhere. We had in the UK, we are reading about the unprecedented temperatures. And I remember joking to one of my colleagues and say, it's good that they are now facing those heat that they are facing. Somebody now is going to talk about climate in a more serious way, with real first-hand experience. That when it's hot, it's hot. It's not a joke, you see, and so forth and so on. So when you come to the issue of societal, I've talked about issues of societal. We need to look at the issues of how are we helping our societies to be better citizens, to be able to pay their taxes. Somebody who's not working cannot be able to pay tax. You see what I mean? And so forth and so on. So that on the issue of human rights, I normally take it from procurement responsibility to sustainability. When you come to the credibility in terms of online tendering, I gave an example of my previous role, what we did. We know that once tenders are loaded online, you cannot jeopardize it, you cannot manipulate it. If it was loaded at 3 p.m., it's not going to go 3 p.m. Everybody's going to show that every submitted tender, it was going to show the time that it was submitted. So tendering online gives us credibility, but as Ahmed says, it has got also its challenges in terms of how do we then deal with those suppliers who cannot be able to do that because of their capability, technology. And that's why I gave an example earlier on of we need to focus on establishing iHubs where we can and budget for those iHubs. And of course, we need also to do that segmentation that is mentioned in my presentation and that he has raised. We segment, we see which suppliers we can be able to work with in terms of stages. And that leads me to a point where I say, colleagues, transformation journey is not a lock and stock and barrel activity. We don't implement a technology lock, stock, and barrel today and then we switch it on tomorrow. In procurement, if we do that, we're going to miss out. And I said, that's why I said, don't focus on this, the tool, focus on the process, focus on the tasks. What can we bring in now that can be automated now, right now, and what can be automated tomorrow, and what can be automated the next day. So we go in stages. So let's not say, I'm gonna bring in all the procurement tasks and stages at once and lock everything in and then switch the system on. We're not gonna be able to deliver. People are gonna be really mad at us, and they're not going to allow us to attain the objective we want to attain. So stagger your implementation, plan well. All this is about, one, the benefits that we want to attain versus the benefit versus the value that we are able to realize. That takes us to the question where Ahmed asked the issue of the value, the value presented, or the slide that shows benefits versus targets versus values realized. That was a case whereby the implementation of the technology wasn't done in the right way. So it was an example of giving us a situation whereby if we don't go the right way, then we're going to end up with such a scenario. We're going to end up with those kind of, where we promise very high numbers, but then we end up delivering very low numbers. Yes, and it's not going to be a very good opportunity for us. Then the last one is, I've talked about maintaining of the integrity. The integrity issue is about, we know technology is going to help us be more integrity, be more honest with whatever we do. Because as I said, if, for example, we are doing tendering, it's there. The system may be set up because we have solutions that you submit a tender, the system evaluates it, the system ranks it, and the system spills to you the results. So all you're doing is you taking the results and presenting it to the tender board and saying, this is what the system has spilled. Nobody can be able to tell you that, oh, you know what, Ahmed, you jeopardized the system, or you interfered, or you brought in your own evaluation, or you brought in your supplier in the middle of the tendering process. Because everything is auditable, everything is there. The audit report is printed, and everybody who's in the committee that awards can be able then to award, and even the suppliers can be able to access, given the necessary rights and whatever they need to be given. They can be able to see what was spilled out and how it happened. So you remove that human element out of the system. You're divorcing yourself from a lot of complaints that we are currently facing. You divorce yourself from a lot of appeals and a lot of stoppages and court cases that sometimes, if you look at it very critically, could have been avoided if we really operated in a manner that is required of us. I hope I've covered the elements that were asked.
Thank you very much for that. Whilst the people are considering questions to ask, I'm going to go through to the chats, and as there are some questions that are in the chat. We have Josephine, who shares with us, says, very informative and good presentation, Mr. Otieno, on moving away from silos to a network of experts. Do you imply that all the staff in the front, mid, and back office should have knowledge of procurement and supply chain? That's the question.
Thank you very much, Ayanda. Thank you for the person who was asking that question. Josephine, thank you very much for the question. What that slide is trying to communicate to us is that as procurement, especially procurement leaders who, and let's not be fixated that a CPO, that I'm talking to CPO. Everybody is a leader within procurement in an organization. We all are a team. That's what I normally tell my teams that I work with. The CPO is a title in a door. A procurement manager is a title in a door. A category manager, a buyer. I normally don't like even using the word buyer because we've moved to so those are titles. But at the end of the day, is that we need expertise, and we need to move from the mentality that we are procurement to a mentality that we are value addition unit, if I may call it that. We studied procurement, or some of us landed in procurement by default. We've been working in procurement, and we have used the term procurement colloquially for a very long time. Let's review rejig our rear view mirror and say we are a value addition unit. And to be a value addition unit, we need to recognize expertise that are in our unit and expertise that we will need that will support that value addition element that we are that we need to bring into our organization. So do everybody within the front office or the middle office or the back office need to have procurement knowledge? Yes and no. Yes, you need to understand certain principles of procurement. You need to understand that procurement operates transparently. Procurement is there to operate ethically. Procurement is there to operate fairly. So that's a basic core element of a procurement value addition unit or value addition person that has to have that particular core trait within them. Now, beyond that, within procurement, you may have somebody who has specialized skill in IT. They understand data analytics, back, forth, and center. We will need that from where we are going. You may have somebody who's very skilled in category management. We need that. You may have somebody who knows system, IT system operations, how IT systems operate. We're going to be going into things like Chatterbot, where we are deploying things like Chatterbot. We need people with what we call IT coding skills, IT software development skills, and so forth and so on. I talked in my presentation, I said, we need business developers. We need people with business development skills, people who can then be able to approach external stakeholders within the procurement value chain and speak to them and speak their language. Sometimes we get so much fixated in our procurement lingos and our procurement processes and our procurement procedures that we sometimes forget the lingo of the stakeholders that we have both internally and externally. So we will need those kind of expertise. Some element of a little bit understanding of what procurement is, as well as a deep understanding of your area of expertise, for me, is something that will be very integral in what we are trying to attain, or to be able to live the new future that is with us, to be able to then be able to deliver the value that we are supposed to deliver.
Thank you very much for that response. I do see Sanele Homo have their hand up. I will ask them to ask their question and then I'll go back to the chats. Sanele.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Program Director. Thank you to our guest speaker. A very informative presentation. My comment is not actually a question, it's a comment. In a South African perspective, I can safely say we do appreciate the value that is brought by automation. It is unmatched. And in some of the areas where they've automated their processes, you can see the value of putting things online, systematically procure for government. They have a reduced number of irregular expenditures. However, in South Africa, we have a situation, I will talk in a South African perspective because I am a practitioner, a SCM practitioner in South Africa. National Treasury have placed a moratorium in government institutions to automate procurement processes. It has been there for a very long time now. And it won't be lifted until they themselves have automated processes nationally. Now, there's a serious challenge because it seems there is a lack of political will to automate procurement processes. You ask yourself why. In the current situations that we face a lot of interference, human element, human errors in the procurement processes because the current practices, the dominant current procurement practice is the old one, the paper-based model. And most of the time, in KZN, we have something called tribunals. Most of the time when the matters are tabled to those tribunals, you'll find that the argument that is dominant or the grounds of appeal are that you didn't attach this document. And the appellant or who is the service provider is saying, I did attach this document, which now, if we can follow the presentation of today, you could see that those questions or those arguments do not longer have the space in our current times. We should be moving in a manner, in a sense, or in a space where procurement processes have been automated. So if you look at the rise in corruption, system abuse, this debate, at least now, should be escalated to a level of emergence global attention, similar to the climate change, because if you look at the number of people who lose their lives just because of procurement processes, where they have to become witnesses because now they have to say, yes, someone did this. Whereas if there was an automated system, there was not going to be a need to ask any person, but you would have drawn the report from that system. So I'm just making a comment to say, look, maybe in any way or every corner that we get, we need to raise this debate at every level to say, maybe the automation of procurement processes should take center stage now. It should be in a position where we say, at least by this time in Africa, the continent should at least be automated, or globally we should have automated our procurement processes now. It really is getting late. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sanele, for that. Amos, I do see your hand. I'm just going to go to the chats and then come back to you and then ask Mr. Otieno to comment. In terms of the chat, we have a question from Bosco Mapunda, who says, well said, Mr. Otieno, the 4 pillars of supply chain: people, process, systems, and execution. How can execution be achieved with data integrity? That's the question, Mr. Otieno. For you just to keep that at the back of your mind, I will go to Amos and ask if Amos can ask his question and comment, and then Mr. Otieno will comment or answer.
Yeah, thank you very much, the presenter and all the participants. I'm calling from Uganda. In Uganda, we appreciate the system. We have what they call electronic government procurement system, or in short, EGP. And we used to have a lot of workload in terms of paperwork. It has really tried to minimize the cost of doing administrative costs. And you find you used to write a lot of reports, but now the reports are minimized. So I really appreciate the importance and the relevance of automation in procurement system, whereby it has relieved us to do other strategic issues within the organization, and also to network with the other organizations around. So I appreciate that. However, my concern is the presenter, in his presentation, it's like he has portrayed the negative aspect of the automation a bit so much, but in my view, automation, when we take it slowly, it will help to reduce costs, it will improve the functions, and to also add it to sustainable procurement, because you are not destroying the environment so much in order to get paper. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amos. Mr. Otieno, if you could please say comment on Sanele Amos and Bosco, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Ayanda. On Bosco's query of execution, how can execution be achieved through data integrity? As I said earlier on, basically, junk in, junk out is a very common adage that is used when you come to, especially since people started using computing systems for their work. So in procurement, we have so many data that we receive or we get on a daily basis. So for example, I'll give you a typical example. If you have wrong data on suppliers, for example, you're going to end up not really executing the procurement mandate the way it should be done. Let me go a little bit deeper into this. Let's say whereby you have situations where suppliers are people who are related to employees within the procurement unit, and that data is not cleaned, is not vetted, is not verified, is basically nobody really knows that there's people within the procurement unit whose families are doing business with the organization. So you're going to continue doing business with these people, with these family members of people who are working within the procurement. Thus, negating the basic tenets and the basic principles of procurement. So that is why it's very important to have not only data, but you have clean data, data that has been vetted, data that has been verified, and data that if it comes into the public knowledge, it's not going to cause a hullabaloo. I always tell procurement teams that I work with is that the problem is not normally the issue of somebody saying that procurement is corrupt. That one is said every day and every time it was going to be said. But the challenge or where the cost is to go and clean that wrong information that is out there. That is where the cost lies. So we can save our organization 50, 60%, those good numbers that we can present to the board, we can present to our leaders. But if we have poor data, that data is going to come and bite us in the back one day or another. Because it's going to only take one person. It takes only one person to get wind or to get hold of that information, and we are in trouble. I tell my teams that, you know what, the supplier that bribes you, that gives you the money, is the same supplier who's gonna hang you out in the cold tomorrow. Because tomorrow, if they don't win a tender, they're gonna say that so-and-so or this and this procurement guys who are working there are corrupt. So where do you think the newspaper get that information? It's from the same suppliers that today we are in bed with. They're calling us in their hotels. They're calling us in their organization. They are fetting us with all the goodies that they want to give us. Tomorrow, the same supplier lacks to get a tender from us, and honestly, sometimes they've lacked it very honest, because probably they have become what you call laxed, because they know I have Ayanda in there. Ayanda is going to fix me up. It's going to jeopardize the numbers for me. Or I have Amos there. Amos is going to, or I have Zanella there. Is going to, you see what I mean? So that's why automation is important. Beyond, it also protects us as we as procurement professionals. Secondly, it enables us to effectively and efficiently mitigate the risk of brand damage or brand image damage. We know we are in the age of fake news. A supplier is going to be disgruntled because they didn't win the tender. They're going to put a fake news or a fake information into the public domain, and probably maybe they are one of the huge suppliers who can afford to buy the newspaper guys and put the information out. Or sometimes they don't even need to buy. They can put it in Instagram. They can put it on Twitter. You see what I mean? Now we need to start scrambling back. Okay? And our directors and our senior managers and everybody in the organization is calling us, hey, what's going on? What's happening? That is where the problem is. So that's why it's important to have clean data, to have data that is integrable. It has got integrity. So that is how that data enables us to execute on our mandate of fairness, transparency, and competitively. When we come to the gentleman from Uganda with the element of the presentation actually is not looking at automation in a negative way. The presentation is telling us the steps on how we can then go through the transformation journey from a manual system to a digitized procurement operation. We did a presentation last year, I think it was in September, where we looked at the different automation platforms that are out there in the market. And we went through the journey of automating the procurement process or automating the procurement function, where we saw where the journey began. I think we started somewhere in 1978, and we've come a long way with different tools and different different platforms in the market. So today, what we were trying to attain is that we are building on that discussion we had in September, and emanating from a question that one of the attendees attended, who asked a question and say, will automation now render the procurement unit, people who are working in the procurement unit, jobless? So we are marrying that particular aspect by answering that question in more detail by saying, in order not to be rendered redundant, these are the skills that are going to be needed in the transformation journey from manual systems to automated system or to an automated function. So within those skills, you have a space where you have some skills, maybe within the procurement, but you may be having some other hidden skills that if we as leaders within the procurement unit upskill you and train you, and then also bring other skills that we don't have internally to join in a structure that is no longer functional, but more of what we call a network kind of structure, then we stand to gain more value with automation rather than operating as a silo. So we are not demonizing the automation, and it will be very, we will be very naive to demonize automation, because everything around us is now automated. Everything around us is getting automated, and it's getting automated very fast. I gave an example of FIFA. FIFA, between the time they implemented VR as part of the offside checking mechanism in their system or within the tournament, to the time that they have put on the same system, they now have put an artificial intelligence in the ball, because they have realized that even with the VR, there's still human element. There's still human intervention. And with that human intervention, there's still a degree of error that can crop up to make the other team lose in a situation where they wouldn't have lost. So now they've said, okay, fine, let's move this further and implant an artificial intelligence onto the ball. And in that situation, the ball, if you read about their technology, how it's going to work, it's an amazing use of technology. And you're not looking at it from a sportsman or from a football fan or whatever, but look at it from a point whereby you are looking at it and saying, what is going to happen within the artificial intelligence space if this kind of capabilities are coming into play? They're talking about some very, very crazy data points that they are extracting by just implementing that technology, and takes us back to the element of data and how that data, it's going to be very integral and it's going to be very useful going forward in terms of what they're trying to achieve. Come back to our space within the procurement. Artificial intelligence is going to It's already there. It's playing some significant role. Last time we talked about things like what we call smart contracts. The gentleman from Uganda has talked about they're not doing a lot of paperwork that they used to do. Smart contracts are coming into place where you can draft contracts smartly, you can deploy them smartly, you can manage them smartly, and you can monitor them smartly. So there's a lot of things that automation is bringing into play. So yeah, I think I've covered those two aspects that were asked.
Thank you very much for that. I'm looking at the time and I'm seeing that it's 10 to 5 and we've had the indulgence of the audience for almost 2 hours. So at this juncture, I'm going to make a last call for any last quick questions anyone would like to ask Mr. Otieno. If there are none, I'm going to then ask Mr. Otieno if he would like to say just 1 minute closing remarks before we close the session. As I can see also on the chats, I've asked all the questions that have been put there. Mr. Otieno, just 1 minute closing remarks before we close our session.
Thank you again, Nyanda. Thank you very much for the audience that have attended today's session. It was very informative. I think we all learn from each other. We get to have these particular sessions. They are learning sessions that enable us to enhance and betterment ourselves as procurement professionals. The most important thing is automation is here to stay. It's moving very quickly. It's going to hit us as nothing else. But let's focus. Let's try and develop ourselves and learn to live with it. That's basically what we need to really embrace and utilize it to bring value to the organizations that we work for, and even in our own personal lives. Let's embrace technology even in our own personal life. It's an amazing world that we are living in. A lot of things are happening. Procurement has a lot of opportunities at this particular moment. Challenges are there, but where there's challenges, there's lots of opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for those closing remarks. And once again, thank you very much for your presentation and sharing your knowledge with us. We really do appreciate it from AISCA. I'd also like to thank the audience for firstly indulging us with staying on for 2 hours, also waiting slightly at the beginning. And for all those return participants, thank you even more for joining us every month. I'd like to invite everyone to join us again as the last Tuesday of the month, where we'll be having another exciting topic as part of the Game Changer series. As next month in South Africa, we consider it Women's Month in South Africa. We will be having a panel that will be discussing issues in terms of women in procurement, and we'll also have women as panelists in that particular session. So I invite you to join us on the last Tuesday of the month. With that, again, thank you, audience. Thank you, Mr. Otieno. And also thank you, the back office of AISCA, for handling everything for this afternoon. Have a great evening for those it's going into evening, and for those on the other side of the continent, have a great afternoon. Until we meet again, last Tuesday of the month, stay well and stay safe. Thank you.